Hello, guys and girls. I'm excited to see you today as we continue our study of how to use context clues. So let's go ahead and dive in and think about our essential question. Today, our focus is, what do growing readers do when they come to a word in a text they do not understand? Today, I'm learning about context clues so that I can determine the meaning of unknown words. I'll know I've got it if I can figure out the meaning of a new unknown word. That's our target for today. As we begin today's lesson, we need to think about what our data tells us about where we currently are in this standard. So L44A, I can use context clues like definitions, examples, or restatements in a text as a clue to the meaning of a word or phrase. This data can be found in your interactive notebook. And this data tells us where we are, where we started from the pretest. It tells us where we will finish, but those questions can only be answered if we think about what will we do today to make those changes. So what will we do to grow today? Now, yesterday we started learning about context clues. Let's go ahead and warm up our brains before we go into the text and look at notes and think about how context clues can help us. Use context clues to determine the meaning of unknown words. So here's some examples. Let's look at the first one. Hey, I'm noticing these kind of look like devices, maybe even cell phones, iPhones. And then I'm also noticing it kind of looks like somebody's texting back and forth. Let's look at the first one. The first person says, hey, what are you doing after school today? The second person responds with, I'm heading to the mall. Do you want to come? Yeah, I'll meet you in the corridor that my locker is in. Ooh, I'm thinking about this word here. It's an interesting new unknown word. And I'm thinking there's probably some context clues around it. So to warm up our brains, I want you guys to work together with me and think about with me what clues might lead you to the best answer to the meaning of that word. Let's try one more. I heard that the coach canceled your soccer game tonight because of the weather. And then the next person says, yeah, the conditions on the playing field were dismal. We would be slipping and falling all over the place. So I'm thinking about this word dismal. I'm noticing some clues around it. Great job warming up your brains with me, and I'm loving how we thought deeply about how there's context clues around these words that help us determine what they mean. Now that you've had an opportunity to warm up your brains, you already know that corridor, since it's where their locker is located, I'm noticing it says I'll meet you in the corridor that my locker is in. These are some great clues that can help us figure out the meaning of the word corridor. And now you can see an image of a corridor. Notice those clues my locker is in. So it's kind of like a hallway close to the entrance. And you can see in the photo at the very end of the hall, there's an entrance way where there's doors. As you thought about the word dismal, you probably already noticed that it says slipping and falling all over the place. Whoa. I'm thinking these are definitely clues talking about playing on a field with bad weather. Those are all clues. So dismal, when it says the conditions on the playing field were dismal, then this must not be very good conditions. Bad or dangerous would be a better word. Unfavorable might even be one. Thank you for warming up your brains with me. Let's dig a little bit deeper. Yesterday we learned some steps that can help us as we think about context clues. Let's review those. Our notes tell us that context clues are clues that readers use to find out the meaning of unknown words within a passage, story, or text. Kind of like what we did when we warmed up our brains a few moments ago. Growing readers first read the sentence and underline or target the unknown word. Secondly, they think about what's happening in the sentence or the story. Thirdly, they find other words that may explain the meaning of the unknown word. It can be in the sentence before, the sentence of, the sentence after, anywhere around the word or phrase. And then step 4, try different words in place of the unknown word to see if it makes sense. Now notice how it says makes sense and not sounds right. This isn't about knowing how to pronounce words or how to say them, but it's about digging into the meanings of things. Yesterday we looked at a couple of different types of context clues that authors can give. We looked at 5. We're going to review those today, as well as add on a couple more types of clues that authors can often give. Yesterday we already talked about the synonym clue, an antonym clue, an example, a definition, and our notes from yesterday called the last one an inferencing clue. So let's look at a couple of more kinds of or types of clues that authors can give today. They can also give punctuation marks. This can be a clue to help you figure out what something means. They can give you helping words. Pictures can even be clues when you're thinking about what words or phrases might mean. Keywords, and then the very best readers use words that they know, because that is what we do as readers. We build on what we know, and that is called our schema. Let's dig deeper into the most common 5 that we talked about yesterday. Look at on your screen, you can see those 5 different types of clues that authors give. Let's look at the first one with me, an example. An example clue often gives words like, such as, and or. So our notes say celestial bodies, such as the sun, moon, and stars, are natural objects visible in the sky. I'm noticing the author gives me things like sun, moon, and stars, objects that are visible in the sky. Well, these are all examples of celestial bodies. So this that I'm trying to determine must mean something like a sun, moon, star, so something in the galaxy. Notice how that example clue helps me determine the meaning of that unknown word or phrase. Let's look at the next example. Sometimes authors will give us a definition or tell us the meaning. Like aphids, pear-shaped sucking insects, appear on garden roses in May and June. Well, I'm noticing that the author, after the unknown word or phrase, aphids, said this, pear-shaped sucking insects. Well, that's the definition. He gave it to us. It told us the meaning. So an aphid is actually a pear-shaped sucking insect. Wow, that would be very helpful. Let's look at the next type. A word part. This is prefixes, base words, and suffixes. Parts of the word inside the word. She was unsuccessful in her attempt to run the marathon. So let's look inside it for those clues. I'm noticing un. I'm noticing the root word success, and I'm noticing full. Well, I know that un means not. Success is something that you're good at. I know something about that. So not good at, she was not good in her attempt to run the marathon, so she must not have done a very good job running. Notice how those word parts helped me figure out the meaning of that word. Now, I just spoke with you guys about schema, and that's the very next one. Schema is your background knowledge. This is a big one when we're thinking about figuring out words or phrases we don't know. The very best readers think about, what do I know that I might can connect to what I'm trying to figure out. Maybe it's something I've read before. Maybe it's something I've experienced in my own life. Those are important things when you're thinking about building comprehension. Let's look at the next one. Pictures. Pictures are photographs or illustrations used in the story, and often authors will hide things in the pictures that can help you figure out the meanings of words or phrases. The last two we looked at yesterday, synonyms, that's when the author gives you the same meaning. Like this example, she knew the figure was fragile when she felt all of the delicate pieces in her hand. So I'm noticing that the author gave the word delicate pieces. This is a synonym for the word fragile. So delicate pieces fall apart easily. So that must be the meaning of the word fragile. Notice how that synonym, delicate pieces, helped us figure out the word. Lastly, we have an antonym clue. This is when an author gives us the opposite meaning. Like this example, he is always on time, not like myself, who always seem to be tardy. So if I'm trying to determine the meaning of the word tardy, it says he is always on time, not like myself, creating a contrast. We talked about how antonyms create the opposite or a contrast. So tardy, he's always on time, not like myself, who always seems to be tardy. So tardy means not on time. And I know that because the author gave me the opposite of that in the sentence or an antonym clue. So once again, our 5 most important types of clues are examples, definitions, word parts, schema, pictures, synonyms, and antonyms. And we also talked about some additional ones that authors can give previously. Now let's put those skills to the test as we think about using those types of clues to determine the meanings of words and phrases. Yesterday we started reading Because of Winn-Dixie, and we built our background knowledge about the character. We figured out some of the meanings of unknown words in the text, and we're going to continue that today. So before we dive in to the context clue portion, let's review just a little bit about the story, because that's important in understanding the text. We don't want to lose our focus of comprehending what we're reading as we break down these challenging words or phrases. So we know that we have the main character, Opal. We know that we have a dog she found at the grocery store named Winn-Dixie. These are major characters in the text. We know she convinces her father to keep Winn-Dixie, at least for now. We know that she likes to visit the Herman W. Block Memorial Library, and Winn-Dixie sits outside, peeking through the window and watching her choose her books. And we also know that Miss Franny, who owns the library, mistakenly thought that Winn-Dixie was a bear peering or looking through the window. So once she calmed down and realized it was just a dog, she then told Opal the story of how a bear actually did come into the Herman W. Block Memorial Library when she was younger, and helping us understand why she reacted that way. The last thing we read yesterday was a little bit more about Miss Franny and how she was sharing what it was like for her as a young girl and how she acquired or got the library by asking her very wealthy father to create it for her. So we're going to pick up here today, and as we pick up with our text, we're going to specifically be focused on what's happening in the text as well as how to determine the meanings of specific unknown words or phrases. Let's go ahead and continue reading our text. The last thing we read in our previous lesson was Opal saying to Miss Franny, "You asked for a whole library?" Like, whoa. She probably thought that was very strange. "A small one," Miss Franny nodded. "I wanted a little house full of nothing but books, and I wanted to share them too. And I got my wish. My father built me this house, the very one we are sitting in now. And at a very young age, I became a librarian. Yes'm." "What about the bear?" I said. "Did I mention that Florida was wild in those days?" Miss Franny Block said. "Uh-huh, you did. It was wild. There were wild men and wild women and wild animals. Like bears." "Yes, ma'am, that's right. Now, I must tell you, I was a little Miss Know-It-All. I was a Miss Smarty Pants with my library full of books. Oh, yes, ma'am. I thought I knew the answers to everything. And we're going to pause there. As we're thinking, we're going to determine the meaning of Miss Know-It-All. And this is a phrase. Maybe you've heard it, or maybe you are like me and you can use the clues to make an inference about what it might mean. So let's think about where we see it. She's saying I was a little Miss Know-It-All. It says I was a Miss Smarty Pants with my library full of books. I'm thinking that might help me. I'm going to go ahead and underline the sentence where I found it. And we're going to be using that graphic organizer to help us. Okay, so I've written the sentence from the text where I see that word or phrase. I was a little Miss Know-It-All. And now I'm looking inside the word or phrase for any word parts that might help me. Well, I'm noticing that this looks kind of like 4 words all squeezed together with dashes. So I'm thinking these dashes put together might be not necessarily a word part, but definitely something inside the word that can help me. I'm also noticing there are other clues that I've already focused on. I was a Miss Smarty Pants with my library full of books. So I now have written the other clue, and now I'm thinking about a synonym. Oh, wait a minute. I'm even noticing it says, I thought I knew the answers to everything. This is another clue. I'm even thinking we could think of this clue to help us determine maybe even a synonym. A little Miss Know-It-All or a Smarty Pants. I'm thinking a Smarty Pants is a synonym. Okay, so at this point, I should know the meaning of a little Miss Know-It-All. This would be someone who believes they know everything. They think this about themselves. They can't be taught anything. So another word we might use might be the word prideful. Ooh. So I think that Miss Know-It-All is someone that's a prideful person, or maybe bossy even. Let's go ahead and continue reading. Well, one hot Thursday, I was sitting in my library with all the doors and windows open and my nose stuck in a book when a shadow crossed the desk, and without looking up, yes ma'am, without even looking up, I said, is there a book I can help you find? Now notice how she's restating that she was a know-it-all since she didn't even look up from her book before she screamed out asking if she could help someone. Now that we have determined the meaning of that phrase, I'm thinking about what type of example, definition, word part, schema, picture, synonym, or antonym, what type of context clue did the author give me around the words or phrase Miss Know-It-All? Well, I'm noticing that the author said, I thought I knew the answers to everything. So the author gave a definition clue here. He actually gave the definition of Miss Smarty Pants in or around it, which is a clue that helps us understand what it means. Well, there was no answer, and I thought it might have been a wild man or a wild woman scared of all these books and afraid to speak up. But then I became aware of a very peculiar smell, a very strong smell. I raised my eyes slowly, and standing right in front of me was a bear. Yes, ma'am. A very large bear. Oh, I'm noticing the word peculiar. And as I'm thinking of this word, I think you can help me determine the meaning of this word using context clues. As I think about this word peculiar, I first must go back to the text. So I've written the sentence from where I found it, became aware of a very peculiar smell, a very strong smell. I raised my eyes slowly, and that's straight from the text. So now I'm thinking about any word parts in or around the word that can help me. Now I'm noticing that IAR, this doesn't necessarily help me unless I know the meaning of IAR. And that is a good reading strategy to know several prefixes and suffixes. But right now I just want us to focus on pulling out those word parts. So I don't see any others inside the word. And now I'm thinking about other clues. In or around the sentence. I'm thinking, it says, but then I became aware of a very peculiar smell. A very strong smell. And then it says, I raised my eyes slowly. I think I raised my eyes slowly might be a clue. I'm also thinking it's some kind of smell, and it uses this word very in front of it. These are all clues that can help me. Now I'm thinking about a synonym or a word that might mean the same. This is when I can plug it in and think about what makes sense. Well, a very something smell. It made the character raise their eyes slowly. So I'm thinking peculiar could mean strange. Let's plug it in and see if it makes sense. Became aware of a very strange smell, a very strong smell. I'm thinking it could be. Another word might be the word different. Odd. Some of you might even say weird. So I'm thinking the meaning of the word peculiar must mean something or someone who is strange, different, or odd. So it's describing the smell. So notice how I said something that is strange, different, or odd. So this smell she's smelling is a very odd smell. So notice how important that is when I'm thinking about what's happening to the character, as well as trying to figure out what that word means. When I'm thinking about the type of clue the author gave, I do not think the author gave an example, a definition, a word part that was helpful. The pictures didn't necessarily help. There were no synonyms or antonyms that helped. I do think this is a schema or an inferencing type of context clue. Okay, so far we know there's a huge bear in the library. Let's see what happens. How big? I asked. Oh, well, said Miss Franny, perhaps 3 times the size of your dog. Then what happened? I asked her. Well, said Miss Franny, I looked at him and he looked at me. He put his big nose up in the air and sniffed as if he was trying to decide if a little Miss Know-it-all librarian was what he was in the mood to eat. And I sat there, and then I thought, well, if this bear intends to eat me, I am not going to let it happen without a fight. No, ma'am. So very slowly and very carefully I raised up the book I was reading. What book was that? I asked. Okay, before we continue going, you can see there's a photograph of Miss Franny describing this event in her life, and I like that the author gave me that to help build my understanding of what's happening between these two characters. So I'm noticing there's a challenging word that I can break down. I'm noticing this word that's highlighted in blue, and it's the word intends. And I think the author gave me clues, if I take the time to use them, that I can use to figure out what it means. So I'm noticing it says, well, if this bear intends, and then here's the clue, to eat me, okay, so I'm thinking intends, a synonym might be the word plan. Let's plug it in and see if it makes sense. Well, if this bear plans to eat me, I think so. I'm thinking that might be it. So intends means to plans, and our clue that helped us to eat me. Let's keep reading and see what else we can discover. What book was that? I asked. Why, it was War and Peace, a very large book. I raised it up slowly and then I aimed it carefully. And I threw it right at that bear and screamed, "Be gone!" And do you know what? "No, ma'am," I said. "He went, but this is what I will never forget. He took the book with him." "Nuh-uh," I said. "Yes, ma'am," said Miss Franny. "He snatched it up and ran." "Did he come back?" I asked. "No, I never saw him again." Well, the men in town used to tease me about it. They used to say, "Miss Franny, we saw that bear of yours in the woods today. He was reading that book, and he said it sure was good, and would it be all right if he kept it for just another week?" "Yes, ma'am. They did tease me about it," she sighed. "I imagine I'm the only one left from those days. I imagine I'm the only one that even recalls that bear. All my friends, everyone I knew when I was young, they were all dead and gone." She sighed again. She looked sad and old and wrinkled. It was the same way I felt sometimes being friendless in a new town and not having a mama to comfort me. I sighed too. Winn-Dixie raised his head off his paws and looked back and forth between me and Miss Franny. He sat up then and showed Miss Franny his teeth. "Well, now, look at that," she said. "That dog is smiling at me." "It's a talent of his," I told her. It is a fine talent," Miss Franny said, "a very fine one," and she smiled back at Winn-Dixie. "We could be friends," I said to Miss Franny. "I mean, you and me and Winn-Dixie. We could all be friends." Miss Franny smiled even bigger. "Why, that would be grand," she said, "just grand." Before we continue, we are going to move into our guided practice and determine the meanings of both recalls and grand using context clues. And here's our graphic organizer. Now that you have determined the meaning of both recalls and grand, let's go ahead and finish our excerpt and see how this section or portion of the text ends. "And right at that minute, right when the three of us had decided to be friends, who should come marching into the Herman W. Block Memorial Library but old peach-faced Amanda Wilkinson. She walked right up to Miss Franny's desk and said, 'I finished Johnny Tremain and I enjoyed it very much. I would like something even more difficult to read now because I'm an advanced reader.' 'Yes, dear, I know,' said Miss Franny. She got up out of her chair. Amanda pretended like I wasn't there. She stared right past me. 'Are dogs allowed in the library?' she asked Miss Franny as they walked away. 'Certain ones,' said Miss Franny, 'a select few.' And then she turned around and winked at me. I smiled back. I had just made my first friend in Naomi, and nobody was going to mess that up for me. Not even old peach-faced Amanda Wilkinson. Before we continue our lesson today, I want us to think about this word advanced, and this was my last model for now. So I'm noticing the word advanced comes right before the word reader. This is a clue, so some type of reader. And I'm noticing it says that this person came in because she wanted something even more difficult to read. So I can infer the meaning of the word advanced must be above average or very good at. Notice the clues help me to see that. Even more difficult to read now. And I'm noticing it says, I would like something even more difficult to read now because I'm an advanced reader. Think about how those clues helped us to determine what the meaning of the word advanced must be. Next, we are going to check our understanding of context clues. You'll be solving this in your interactive notebook and clicking your answers into Socrative. So let's read the question together. Which of the following words means the same as grand? Large, small, magnificent, and terrible. Now, the very best reader will go back and look at the text, of course. Thank you so much for joining me as we continue our study of context clues using the text because of Winn-Dixie. I can't wait to see what you do next.